They're on now. We're good.
Okay, so there's seven.
7.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend another comprehensive plan meeting. Carolyn wasn't able to make it tonight, so she sent AJ to do tonight's presentation. Just want to give you some good news. We did apply for that grant to help pay for the cost of this. We submitted for $29,000 to cover half the cost of the comprehensive plan, and we only got $25,000. But still, it's a good chunk of change to help pay for this plan. So that's some good news to start off with. And now I'll turn it over to AJ.
Okay. I think everybody, I'm AJ Schwartz, work with Carolyn in terms of environmental planning and design. Would like to say that I probably mentored Carolyn, so I think I can jump in pretty well in terms of that's a gray hair comment. So can jump in terms of the topic. And I think the key thing tonight is starting to get into a little bit of a discussion. And once you look at some of the mapping, and I give you some explanation of that, of really kind of what you think the community wants to be when it grows up. And you're getting at a point in some cases, and you've been having some discussions like the tipping point where, okay, you need to maintain amenities and you need to maintain character and quality of life and those types of things. This starts to really kind of drill into areas that could be developed for future purposes, you know, whether that's residential, commercial, whatever. And it's kind of beginning to shape where North Huntington wants to be, you know, 20, 50, 100 years into the future. So number 2 on the agenda, I'm skipping number 1, that was the intro. Number 2 is to go through some of the background mapping. The packets you have are all the hard copies that Harry's going to put up on the screen. There may be 1 or 2 additional maps in the packet that aren't on the screen. Wanted to give you that just to give you a little bit of context. 3, we're going to spend the bulk of the time on, and that's really getting into what some of this stuff means. Some of it's related to population growth that you've had over the last 20 years or so, and how to use that maybe to kind of project where, if there is additional development in the future, which there will be additional development in the future, where that really makes the most sense from your perspective to be directed. And then just have discussion under number 4. And then get into, before we leave, trying to define a schedule, which you kind of have a regular schedule. So the map that's up on the screen right now is giving you kind of the itemization of community assets. And so this is anything from parks to police station, fire station. This is just kind of a fact sheet. This is a fairly common analysis or map that you deal with in terms of a comp plan. One of the things that communities often will use their comp plans to better understand is when there is areas that have not been developed and there is potential development, are those places that need to have additional support related to parks, fire stations, those types of things. So this is probably just a marker, just a remembrance, and you guys are using your binders, so you want to put that in there because in the future when we have some discussions, you may want to go back and refer to. Now, there may be other amenities or assets that you think should be put onto the map. So in some cases, you know, there's some communities that want to put, it may not necessarily be a publicly owned facility, but they want to, it's used for civic purposes. It's providing some sort of amenity in terms of the community. And just to pick an example, it could be something like a YMCA, okay? There may be other assets on here that you think should get added. I'm not saying specifically that, but just using it for an example. Questions on that one? That's real easy. All right, second one should be your transportation. For the reason that you see on the screen, this is one that made a couple little tweaks in terms of the graphics so the roads pop a little bit better. So on the screen, there are a lot of similar purple. We kind of accentuated once you took a look at them on the screen. It's like paper copy. Let's get these a little bit bolder. you'll see a hierarchy. So the local streets, so your neighborhood streets, are those that are in that very light green. And the ADTs, anybody know what an ADT is? So a trip is a car going from one destination or one origination to a destination. That's what we call a trip. So that 0 to 700 is those low volume roads. So they largely are your neighborhood streets. The baby blue or the light blue, the 701 to 5,000 cars. And 5,000 sounds like it's a lot of cars. In a daily, that's a day. That's a 24-hour period. 5,000 is not that high a number. You'll see those that, again, the hierarchy is beginning to emerge. Far fewer than the neighborhood streets in terms of that baby blue on the actual map. The purple, the lighter purple, is the 5,000 to the 12,000. 12,000 is now starting to get to some volume. That's beginning to be a notable volume. Those, again, far fewer than even the baby blue. Lincoln Way, Barnes Lake, as an example. Then the pink, or the magenta, and if you got color blindness, you're probably lost because you have no idea. That was a joke. You have no idea which one I'm referring to, but the pink is the 12,000 to 27,000. 27,000 is a good amount of traffic. And then obviously the turnpike, 27 to 50,000, that's the very dark purple. So we also kind of bumped up the line weights so they popped. Now, the pertinence of this map, when we start again looking at some of those areas that have not been developed to date, where the road system is or is not in some cases, to develop some of these areas in the future, if that's something that needs to be considered or thought through in terms of the comp plan, there's probably some additional road infrastructure on that baby blue side that may need to be put into place. It could be contingent upon development, but that's something to think about. We'll go do an analysis of the number of miles of road you have in these different categories, because there's typically some metrics related to area and acres, so you have an idea in terms of what your road density is. But that map, again, that one's going to come back. Next one should be what we're calling land use. Yeah. All right, so Westmoreland County doesn't necessarily, you guys know what land use is? Can anybody tell me the difference between land use and zoning? Zoning is how the township has kind of mapped the community and said, in these areas, it's going to be low-density residential. The lots shouldn't be a half an acre in size. That's an example. Land use is how the land is actually being used. Yes, from time to time there are some differences. Ryan, are there differences for the way people use it versus the way it is on the map? It happens, okay? So this is taken from tax records. So it is not going down to the level that I can distinguish. The red is commercial. So I can't tell you what is a restaurant versus what is a shoe store versus a grocery store like Giant Eagle. What I know is it's taxed as a commercial property. All those land uses that you see over in the legend on the left side of, those are the kind of the categories that Westmoreland generally keeps track of. All the residential is grouped together, whether it's multifamily, higher density single family, or low density single family, it's shown in the yellow. So one of the things that we did with this map, and you'll see in some of the later maps, is started kind of sorting through where development has occurred over the years, and then what land remains to be developed. Because in some cases, some industrial land could be redeveloped. In some cases, agricultural land may be developed. Right now, agriculture is shown in tan, and in the future, through the comp plan, you guys kind of have to sort through. This is one of the challenges in a comprehensive plan is what do you envision for some of those agricultural areas? We're working with a set of communities over in the Allentown area, and one of the things that they're losing their farmland, and it's not so much about losing the farmland, it's about losing their character. It's the farmland is what gives them character. And so part of what they did in their comprehensive plan is set into place some strategies to protect as much farmland as possible. Every community is different. That's one of the things that this whole exercise goes through is clearly defining what your goals are, what you want to be when you grow up. And the comp plan tries to set the policies in place so you can get to where that vision is. Does that make sense? So this map, again, put to the side tonight because it's going to come back here in a slide or two. Important. And a lot of the focus will be on kind of those yellow areas, those light green areas, and kind of the tan areas that are identified as agriculture. Next one. And I'm going to take you through these next couple. Then we'll come back and talk about some of the statistics, and then we'll pull the maps back up. So map, is this one of three?
Yeah,
Harry?
that's
Okay.
all that came through.
How did that happen? Oh, you have a different font. We'll have to, so the text on the maps you can read. We'll have to make sure we use a font that you have on your PDF reader because you see how it got all wonky. That's a fancy planning term. Okay, this map, what we tried to do in working with the staff and in Westmoreland Information, we're able to go through and basically in a simplistic way, that beige tan blob is what has been developed to date. Now, there are going to be houses out in some of this white area. They're very low density that could be further subdivided. The area that's in here could be redeveloped. It could potentially be re-subdivided, but the likelihood is a lot less than you see in the white areas. So the amount of area, you guys know how many acres are in the township? 17,000-ish, somewhere in there, 17, 18,000, okay? About 7,200 acres in 2004 was developed, based on some of the records of the GIS information we had in aerial photos. That left about the 10,270 down the lower kind of left corner of the map. That represented about 59% of the township wasn't really heavily developed. So it was land available for additional development in simplistic terms. The next map, Harry, if you want to go to the next one, now shows what happened since 2004. And we chromatically tried to show this. The progression is the kind of the light tan, which is this color right here. That is up between 2004 2010. So going back, tracing when lots were subdivided and houses were built. Then go to the orange. That happened between 2010 and 2015. And yes, there will be other parcels that were developed, but they're all kind of like pepper, you know, it's not concentrated in any way, shape, or form. And then the very dark brown, kind of that shoe brown color, was between 15 and 20. So you can now start to see, if you compare map 1 of 3 to 2 of 3, side by side, the boundary of development has grown. And so if I go and I tally up all the acreage in that goes to map 3 of 3, which I don't think you have that. This is the one I tried to simplify. Harry, go. Is yours all brown? Yeah. Okay, what we tried to do on this one is the brown represents everything that you saw in 2 of 3. Okay. This map, the green is the land that is available for future development. And this is the thing they really want you to focus on. So that land, again, is lightly developed. It may be farmland. It could be vacant land. It could be former mined area that just has some issues and hasn't been developed. There's a lot of things there. The key thing on this, by 2020, you had grown in terms of development up to about 8,500 acres of the 17,000 in the township, and there's about 9,000 acres right now lightly developed or undeveloped. Okay? Now, one would say, okay, what's that all matter? Can we go to the demographics? So what we know is in 2010, the township was about 30,000 people, 30,600 people. In 2020, you had grown to about 31,800, 900, which is in Western PA that you had growth, because in a lot of cases, our communities either remained stagnant or they shrank. And while that trend is beginning to stop, that we're starting to see some positive growth again, it was modest. So you gained about, in terms of total population, about 1,200, 1,300 people. You added about 600 housing units. So 600 new homes. So 1,300 people, 600 new homes, that's a little more than 2 people per house. That is census information. So that's the stuff that people would volunteer. So when you get your little census form and you have to kind of fill in circle the ovals or color in the ovals and then you send it in. Then the question is, do you live in the same house that you lived in 5 years ago or 1 year ago? And in some cases, there's a little bit of a lag. Because what we do know is, in terms of, Harry, if you want to go to the next one, your permit information, the number of homes that actually were constructed in that same period, that's the blue line. You added about 900 residential permits in that same period, not the 500, 600. So again, there's a little bit of a discrepancy. I would assume the township records are the most accurate records because you're tracking your permits all the time. The red line is commercial development, could include multifamily, but so anything that was a commercial building permits on the red line, the residential is in the yellow. But when I go back and I look at the number of people and the number of units that you've kind of constructed in that period up to 2020, you're gaining about, I want to say, about 200 people per year, okay, with your new development. If I go and you develop about 75 acres per year, so if there's a tract development that occurs, a new neighborhood's being created, there's probably, how large is your development, the land that's being developed?
Acreage?
Yeah.
62 lots.
62 lots, they're
80
probably,
some acres, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
no,
Total, wasn't it?
no, 66.
66 acres.
Yeah, but they're
62
not
lots.
using, they're not only using maybe
Yeah.
35 or 40.
So if you think through probably in a 1-2 year cycle, about 75 acres per year, it's probably about 1.5, 2 neighborhoods, which when I go back and I look at some of the records, that seems to jive. So if you're developing 75 acres per year, and we have about 8,900 acres left, that's about 100 years of new development that still is out there. That's without taking out really steep areas, without taking out floodplains, all that kind of stuff. And so I think where the comp plan now starts to kick in, and the question that I think everybody, we kind of looked at you guys to start kind of getting your arms around, if there is going to be development, is there a point where you don't want to see every square foot be purposed for something? Is there green space that should stay? Is there farmland that is the prize farmland that should stay? And the comp plan then has to figure out, how do you do that? If you think there should be continued development, and it should be in the places that makes the most sense from a road standpoint, from an infrastructure, from sewage, those types of things, where do we put it? Because we don't want to build any more road, or we don't want to build any more pipe than we need to, right? And then what do we do with those areas that don't have service? Is that land that should be protected as open space? So ultimately, this is kind of what the comp plan is trying to walk through, and what we wanted to do is get some information down on a sheet so you can start thinking about it. But largely, to go back to this map, the green one is the one that, okay, this is the land that really hasn't, it's been lightly touched. Some of it may have been mined out, and it may have some liabilities to it, but there's a lot of places that really, in that green area, can be developed. Should it? And if it should, how? And what density? If you look at your zoning map, a lot of that is zoned, I think, R4, on the kind of the fringes, the perimeter of the township, which is your low density. That's like 1 acre lots, about 1 acre lots. Is that the right thing? Is there a need for different density than for that remaining land? Or because you don't necessarily have all the infrastructure, it should be that way? So that's, I'll let you guys ask questions about this stuff, and then we can start getting into more of the kind of where the community wants to go.
I have a question. What things can we put in place if we did want to preserve land? Because a lot of the things I hear out in the public is, there's too much development, too many houses, too many bedrooms, in this community. It's like, how do you, if you don't own the land, sort of restrict the development if you're looking at some open space preservation?
So, first, most common technique would be to implement some development standards as a part of zoning. So, if I have, we'll take your property. If I got 70 acres, just for simple math, I got 70 acres, and I have maybe 10 that's in a floodplain. Well, there's already a regulation out there, you can't develop in the floodplain. So my 70 acres isn't 70, it's really 60. Okay, the density that you should be permitted to build to shouldn't be calculated on the 70 acres in terms of the gross parcel, it should be on the 60, take out the floodplain. Increasingly, communities are beginning to say, okay, well, floodplain, that's one thing, but what about our steep slope areas? We don't want, they're treed, they're all largely forested, we don't want to lose those. And maybe in my 70 acre example, there's another 20 acres that's forested, and it is on slope that is greater than, say, 25%. Because once you start getting over 25%, the cost of developing that land gets a lot more difficult. You hit 40%, you're now getting to, in western PA and places that we have lots of clay soil, that's instability. But let's just say they're over 25 acres, and it was 25%, and it's 20 acres. So 20 off of the 60 is 40. Those communities are saying, okay, the density you're allowed to have, that 1 acre, is multiplied times the 40. Because that steep slope area never should get developed. And so it's taken out of the development scheme. And so you don't get the density as a property owner, nor are you allowed to disturb it. So we call it kind of a buildable area approach, so that you're going through your natural resources that you think are important to control. You come up with a restriction for how you want to control those. And then when they are not developed, require those to be put into some sort of open space. Whether they have to be incorporated as a part of an HOA open space, whether they're dedicated to the township. There's a community in Cumberland County, so outside of Harrisburg, that has an approach like that. One of the requirements is the open space has to connect to open space, and if there is development already occurred on an adjoining property, the two open space systems have to connect, so that you're getting more contiguous blocks of green space. So there's probably 20 different approaches you could take. That's just giving you one example. Now, quietly, everything I said there is, at the end of the day, reducing the amount of development that any property owner potentially would have. That's not necessarily an easy thing politically to achieve. because some people look at that as, that's my long-term value on that property. And if I was, an entitlement, they look at it as an entitlement. If I thought I had one house for, that's, for every acre, I get 70 houses. Well, that's dollars. And now I'm down to 40 in my example.
Yeah, a lot of our larger developments, we say internally, the low-hanging fruit is pretty much picked. So a lot of future development is going to be challenging with topography, with running sanitary sewer. So, but we do have a couple PRDs that have challenging topography, but we increase the density of the homes, maybe on smaller lots that's allowed for the underlying zoning district. But then we have areas of open space that stay green and a little bit of interconnectivity. So that, I kind of like that tactic as well, and that's in our zoning ordinance.
And years ago, there was a kind of a trend in Pennsylvania, particularly on the eastern side, to use something called conservation subdivision, which had a little bit of a different purpose, but it's kind of morphed over time into cluster development, which is like what you just described. PRD concept, where you require open space, but you allow them to kind of miniaturize the lot so that they don't have to build as much street and et cetera. The problem with that in some communities is you may be allowing an eighth of an acre parcel, and some communities will say, eighth of an acre. Our minimum is one. That's too small. In not judging, it's just, it is dramatically different than what historically kind of their pattern has been, and that's a tough one for people to swallow. But that's one of the more effective ways of protecting the green space and reducing how much infrastructure you need. Because it hurts you as a community because you have to maintain more stuff, and it obviously hurts the property owner because it costs more for them to develop the property. So it seems to be the win-win for everybody, but it does require higher density in a lot of communities.
I have a question.
Speed is a bad word.
Have you ever heard of the Farmland Preservation Act?
Yep.
I often wondered why North Huntington didn't adopt that and get involved in it. I
Well,
think it would have saved some farms around here, and I'm speaking from an owner that probably would have jumped on that. And that program is, they appraise the property as farm property, but then they appraise it as development property, which is a higher. And the farm owner gets the balance of that money,
Yep.
and then he doesn't develop that land for the life of the property,
And,
which was a good thing because the state had a ton of money they were throwing around.
and the amount of development that you've seen since that program really came out, your window protecting some of those prized properties has gotten smaller.
Probably.
In some cases, so I'm going back to Silver Spring outside of in Cumberland County.
Hmm.
They have a very aggressive farmland preservation program. The communities I had mentioned in Allentown, they actually have on their official map identified what properties they want to buy development rights for. They have a bond that gave them dollars, millions of dollars that they now use to go buy the development rights.
Right.
So they use their official map in a very different way than we typically see in Western PA. It's all legal. They just are buying development rights. They're not actually buying the land. They're buying the difference between
Right.
the developed appraised value versus the farmland appraised value. Same concept. They're just doing it locally.
Yeah, there are several in Westmoreland County that have jumped into this program. And at
Okay.
one time, I was doing 3 years ago, I sat on the board that, worked with various farmlands and got them involved in this where they could sell those rights, and they got a nice check to preserve that land. And it's probably, the life of that will be preserved. To get out of that, which sometimes they can't, there is an open door that they can leave, but they've got to pay the money back. So it was a good program, I thought. But I think we're well beyond that here.
But there's to Ryan's question, there's other techniques to use. It may, for the property owner, may not be the most lucrative, but it may be a way of getting a balance in terms of having development, but at the same time not getting development in places you really don't want the development to be, because it's just gonna be costly for everybody.
the minimum farmland that's even left in Huntington, how much is actually?
Oh, that's, yeah, I didn't,
Little farm on Barnes Lake, and that's it, whatever farmland.
Yeah, it's pretty much gone. The last 15, 20 years, it's been, you know, it's almost too late to do anything.
Yeah, they're viable, make farming viable as a living for somebody there. Or is it just
Well, that's one of the problems. It's not a very viable, the generation coming, like after me, they're not interested in doing this work because it's not a very profitable enterprise to run. You know, it's nice to look at, but the 7-day-a-week job that it creates is just not attractive to the young generation today. They're not interested in it.
like if you were Dairy or Unity, you're in a different neck of the woods, and there is more of a critical mass of other farmland, and you don't have the same, you guys have growth pressure. I mean, that's, your Route 30 changes the world for you guys, and it puts pressure on you. But a place like Dairy or Unity, you have a higher probability of somebody wanting to preserve the farmland. And back to that Allentown example, the one set of, there's 3 communities that are working together. The one community, they probably have 3,000 acres of still active farming. And that's what they're sitting there saying, probably in the next 20, 30 years, the value, because of the demand for residential development, is gonna put a lot of pressure on those property owners, those farmers. And they don't have kids that wanna take over the operation.
Correct.
So they're saying, okay, we gotta think 30 years out and protect this land. And so they're still at a place where they can do it. But you're right, when you look at that land use map, those tan colors, those really light tan, there's not much.
you couldn't make a living on a lot of those lots?
No, you're
Correct.
right.
Correct.
It's not big enough.
But
I
the-
mean, I like the idea of protecting the wooded slopes, the woodland, like, that's, I don't know, I think when people think conserving land, they're thinking of the wooded areas. I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of personal opinion, not so much. Because I look at the very minimal remaining farmland that's left in North Huntington, it's not like it's actively producing community needs other than visually, where the wooded areas, you know, do more in my eyes than maybe from, so it's just not all buildings. But, that's my thought. Just like that little Miranda plan that just got grown on that tiny little parcel of farm. No one knew that land existed, so now that land is useful to the community for housing. And like I felt that was a good use because when was the last time they actually farmed on that tiny parcel? So,
That was part of a larger property,
gotcha.
yes.
If I may interrupt 1 second, if you turn your microphones on so that way everybody can hear, you just have to press the button there, and there's like a green microphone. Make sure that.
Okay, there we go. That's
But-
on the.
As you say, the property becomes, I mean, the further away you go east of here and you get into the Laurel Highlands, in 20 years, they're going to be doing the same thing we're doing right now. It's happening. Somebody asked me about, they wanted to go out to get away from all the population. I said, go 20 miles out of Route 30 down that way and go another 20, because in 20 years, they're going to catch you, and it's going to happen. It's happened here. It's just a matter of time. It's become so valuable that there are people that are getting ready to retire that have worked there that maybe have no retirement funds at all, and that's their retirement, their land.
No, this is a double-edged sword conversation, because you also have to think about what you need for development, meaning if you're anticipating there's gonna be additional residential growth, a lot of your growth over the last 20 years, I think your average, you're about 1.2 acres per lot. So you're a little bit more than a 1 acre lot. From an affordability standpoint, you guys were having that conversation in the very beginning when we first walked in terms of how much a house costs and how big that lot is. That's one of the other things that I'm asking you guys to start thinking about. Because the way that things are zoned for the land that is left, it's largely the 1 acre lots. If that's not what is needed in the future, then you gotta start thinking about, well, what size lot do we need to have? It's not even an open space thing, it's what do you need to have? And it's the same with industrial and commercial. And, the county's spent a lot of time thinking about the 30 corridor and kind of, trying to establish a vision of what Route 30 could be. Just like they were going through kind of that visioning process and thinking through what its future is, I'm asking you to do fundamentally the same thing. So it's not just residential, it's not just green space, it's other stuff.
I mean, aren't the newer Ryan plans, Miranda plans, those are definitely not 1 acre lots. I mean, those are probably what,
Correct.
a third acre?
A third is about the average, I would say, yeah.
If you talk to the people buying homes today, they're not interested in a big lot. They don't want the maintenance of a yard.
Me.
Well, you're somebody unusual. But the majority of the people I talk to, excuse me, but they don't want all that outside work. Their lifestyle is different than that. They just don't want much grass to cut.
I'm in that group. I don't wanna I mowed so much grass when I was a kid, I'm done. I want nothing to do with mowing grass. And again, that's density. A smaller lot just means neighborhoods are more dense, and in some places, communities are sensitive. So it's a balancing act. It's trying to figure out, the comprehensive plan's purpose is you guys sitting down and looking at like that green map again, all that green area, and starting to think through wherever I put my green map of, does that kind of that southwest corner of the township, it's zoned R4, 1 acre lots, is that right? Should we be trying to protect maybe more open space there, but maybe on the other side of the township that is on the edges where there's already been development, maybe that again should be R4, but we should be getting development there because the infrastructure is in place and we have road capacity in those areas. That's what this is all about. Does that make sense? Just to do quick math, this is not meant to scare anybody, just trying to give you some metrics. If I take the amount of growth that you've been seeing over the last 10, 20 years, so that's 75 acres a year, took that, divide 8,900, that's the amount of green that's left, divided by the 75, that's where I got the 118 or 116, 116 years. And if you're adding about 200 people in that period, that, depending upon some other things of how much is constrained by environmental, really steep slopes or floodplain, you could be increasing 16,000 to say 22,000 in population. And remember, today you're at 31,000. So, as you're stewing about this, close your eyes, you're queen or king for the day. And you're asking yourself, what am I picturing the township in 30 years? Let's start with that. Is it green hillsides, forested hillsides that are kind of connected together, and there's neighborhoods that are kind of nestled in between those green spaces? Is it one area is rural as we possibly can make it, and then there's other areas that feels a little bit more urban?
I always feel like the Route 993 corridor is going to be an area of development in the future. I think that there is a lack of sanitary sewage, and there are a lot of steep slopes, excuse me, but I feel like cost benefit, if a developer determines like, hey, I can make some money up here, and once they start bringing sewage out there, you know, people are gonna start connecting the dots and then just add on, add on, add on. And you have a nice road that connects to Monroeville. And so that's what I foresee in 30 years. I would see that corridor kind of picking up on the development side.
Building on that, and would it be that if the township can nudge direct development that way, that would make the most sense?
What do you mean direct? Kind of
Meaning
restrict?
You have more incentives to develop in that corridor as opposed to some other places.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on, I don't view 993 as much of a traffic nightmare as Route 30 is now. You know, PennDOT's not coming through trying to do a 993 project. So the challenges are on Route 30 right now, but I would think 993 has more capacity.
So like 993, I would envision that as being more industrial manufacturing because you have an intermodal right down the road, other side of Trafford. You have the railroad that goes through. They could possibly get a spur put in for, you know, manufacturing to move their goods. Plus you have easy access to Monroeville to get on the turnpike.
Yep.
So, and there's a lot of open space down there that you could try to attract that type of business in. You made it like another RIDC, Westmoreland County puts all over the place. We have one off of Colonial Manor Road. Get another one in that area of the township to bring in more jobs. So if you have, you know, decent jobs there and developers want to branch off of 993, put some more housing development in so it's close to home to drive to work.
Harry, thoughts? I just think that we can hold about 30.
Mostly Lincoln Way,
Should be priority.
To me, that's your first impression.
Yeah.
Moving along Route 30 is your first impression.
What's their timeline for doing that Route 30 project? Is there anything updated on that or?
I think last I checked a few months ago, they're not even project 2023, it's probably until 2024, I imagine.
And that's going from what, 48 to Carpenter Lane, correct? That was last I
Yes.
read.
What are they planning to do?
Yeah, different, at intersections, they're proposing different ramps, jug handles, things like that, just to kind of make traffic on and off a little bit smoother. But a lot of it's just concept right now. You know, for what they're proposing, they don't have a lot of property to do what they're showing on a map.
Just similar to what they did in Murraysville, like up through Delmont.
22, yeah, but they
Yeah.
actually had a little more
They
space
added a
on
lot
the
of
end.
jug handles and stuff there.
Yeah.
I think they're working with CMU to kind of make it Route 30 as a smart corridor, is that correct?
Yeah, there's been traffic studies with CMU to determine, you know, the best routes, and, the Colonial Manor Road intersection's been a problem, so it'd be nice to have like an off-ramp, coming down onto Colonial Manor from 30, so that intersection's not so
I live at that
jumbled.
intersection.
It's a mess.
How many times I come home seeing, you know, sirens and lights.
Yes. It's getting worse.
Yeah. I've lived there 10 years and it seems like in the last couple it's increased a lot, but the stuff that I've seen there. So I completely understand that.
How about you, anybody on this side? Your king for the day.
I,
Go, Jerry.
I just worry a little bit that they are maybe a little bit short-sighted in developing roadways and stuff. And obviously Route 30 needs that, right? But you have multiple companies out there doing like flying taxis and things along these lines as an alternative to eliminate roadway traffic, right? You got Elon Musk out there doing his boring project. I don't know where that stands or how bankrupt he's making that one. But people are thinking of other alternatives aside from just widening the roads, right? It's expensive to buy up the properties to widen everything and add jug handles and all this stuff. So is there alternative things that are coming down the pike that we're not looking at right now that may be here in 10 years, right? You may have, you know, instead of a bus station, you might have like a little taxi station where you can helicopter into work. You know, I watch the Jetsons too much.
I mean, hey, when we were in school, we were all supposed to be driving flying cars by now, so.
Well, let me ask you this, and pardon my ignorance, but the railroad going from shooting down 993, Amtrak uses that, correct, to go down to downtown Pittsburgh?
Right.
But something futuristic
I have
come
no
along,
idea.
and
I
like a
can't-
PRT or something, like the city of Morgantown, West Virginia has, to get people to and from, or the T.
Yeah, I
expanding
mean,
out
any
this
of those
way.
things.
I thought there
Are-
was
are nice
talks of that,
alternative.
but something with the infrastructure of the current railroad, or the rail system couldn't support that safely.
Mhm.
I could be speaking out of turn there, but,
That could be 30, 40, 50 years down.
I mean,
the
right,
pike.
I mean, people on the other side of town, right, they enjoy getting on and taking the T into work and not having to sit in traffic and drive, right? We don't really have that alternative on this side. You sit in the parkway and you wait for an hour to get downtown. Adding more lanes, okay, maybe wait for 45 minutes until there's 16,000 more people here and you're right back in the same situation.
then you could be at the point that it's so developed they can't feasibly increase the capacity of the roadways.
Right.
So, thus far, I've heard you guys, at least three comments have focused on Route 3. Is there kind of consensus that is the top priority? You said it literally, top priority. Do other people feel that way?
So I live right by Route 30, so it's the easy main corridor to get anywhere, right? 993 doesn't take me to too many places. I'm not going to Monroeville.
I think the
Often,
congestion of Route
right.
30 causes the increased congestion of all the roads off of that.
Oh.
People trying to avoid
For
Route 30.
sure. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I do think it's also a concern, like if you are thinking that you wanna increase people moving here and you wanna tap into people that, you know, need to get downtown for jobs, that's a big concern, you know, because you have to take Route 30 and then get on the Parkway and, you know, if you had a better way, like you said, or rail, or some kind, I mean, we had the buses, but they gotta sit in the traffic too. So if you had a better way to get people from here to there for their commute, I think that would be an attractive draw.
I just heard someone report. Are you, as queen for the day, are you 30 years out, you still see North Huntington as, it's a bedroom community where people typically leave in the morning and come back to in the evening?
Well, I think that's an interesting question for a couple of reasons, because I think we're in a transition period where I think a lot of people are working from home, right? So I think if people are going into the city, it's less often than they did, and they probably have some flexibility with hours and days. So I think you have less of a concern, but I still think, I mean, if I'm making a prediction, I think there's gonna be a lot of hybrid work. I think people are still gonna wanna get in the office because I do think there's a social element collaboration element of work that's important. So I do think that it's gonna be a bedroom community still, and I think people are gonna leave the county to go to the more urban locations for their offices.
Others think the same way?
I do wish we had more here in the township that
Right.
people could work, higher paying jobs, like more industrial parks that provide opportunities for different industries. And I was just reading today, I mean, I don't know if anybody saw the news about the nuclear fusion that they're able to,
Yeah.
it's a potential for this clean energy. And I mean, who knows what industry that could spur in 30 years. You know, there might be some sort of plants here that are creating jobs for people to live here and work here, so.
I think transportation is going to be a key issue. I was part of the project, this was 25 years ago, high-speed rail. It was a line from Greensburg that went through Pittsburgh and went clear to the airport. And it was an elevated rail system. And for some reason, it just died. But the theory on it sounded really great, where, I mean, this thing would travel 150, 200 miles an hour on an elevated rail. And you could go into downtown Pittsburgh, continue on to the airport if you wanted to. But that thing sounded real good, and I don't know why it died. But anybody you talk to runs to Pittsburgh now, I mean, by the time you hit the Parkway out of Ardmore Boulevard, it's just a standstill. It just, you don't go anywhere.
Even if you could try to incorporate office space type stuff with the green space around the current parks and stuff we have, you know, whenever people go on break, they go for a walk, they might take a walk through the park, you know, try to attract that way.
Like a mixed use type within our own, within land that we already own.
Right,
And we could potentially lease it to some industries or something.
yeah. Because the younger generation, whenever, you know, they could work on their laptop, they could walk out to the park, sit on a park bench and do their work. And you're getting the foot traffic to that green space and possibly even get more green space out of it connected to our current parks.
So I'm asking a very quiet question. So is the development in the green area less of a priority than seeing redevelopment within the 30 corridor?
I think it goes hand in hand.
I don't think you could develop the green area and leave 30 as it stands still. I think it will bottleneck, create traffic problems, and just be a nightmare for everybody involved.
And I also think too, I mean, there's some, like, people choose to live outside of the urban area because they like the green space. So I think you do have to kind of make that a priority to preserve it. Because if you wanted to live in a place where it was just all buildings, you wouldn't choose this.
I think a lot, one of the profiles we got earlier about people who lived in the North Huntington area was they liked the green space, the larger lots, and kind of being a more rural area, right? Are the people moving in that same way? It doesn't sound like it if we're going from 1.2 acre lots to a third acre lots. It sounds like people are more interested in being closer and more neighborly.
Yeah, 'cause
Now
if
you
you're
gotta,
trying to bring,
like-
but maybe you save some of that area for people who still live here who like that. It's kinda,
because if
the-
you're bringing like tech type jobs in, the people that are working them, like look at like Bakery Square. It's a, you know, a swath of land that the people that work there are living in these condos that don't have to worry about cutting grass or, you know, they can walk, yeah, they can walk to everything in that little community.
I mean, that goes along the line of, I mean, what I just read that the city of Pittsburgh just did. You know, they eliminated all the red tape to convert commercial buildings into residential downtown. So Pittsburgh's already preparing to repurpose all of the office building downtowns into residential because You know, I think people that want to live that style of lifestyle, that's what they're going to turn these medium-sized cities into, like Pittsburgh, into live,
That's it.
work, play type.
That seems
Instead
like
of all
the next
businesses,
generation
so.
coming up, that's what they
But I
wanna be
wonder
in.
what's driving the smaller lots, because I think you could make, there's a lot of reasons why that might be, you know, it might be that they wanna live in this area, but some of the lots are cost prohibitive, so the smaller lots end up being their option. So I'm not necessarily sure that it has to do with, I wanna live in a congested space, it's that I wanna afford to live in this community and that's my best option.
And I would probably gravitate towards what you just said. I'm not sure everybody's making a choice of I want to be in a higher density, smaller lot. It's probably because that's what they can afford. And so then, this comes back to you guys then. If that's the reality, that land values are high, and it costs a lot to develop the property, and they can get, meaning the property owner can realize the profit that they think is appropriate, and the consumer can afford to live there, what are the amenities you need to give them? Because when on a smaller lot, there is more pressure on the parks, there is more pressure on the remaining green space you have, because they don't have the ability to enjoy it on their own land, right? Because they don't have that 1 acre parcel. There may be some people that choose because they want to be higher density, but I think we've seen a lot of places where there is affordability issues, and we go back to that conversation we had at the very beginning. I mean, homes are nicely priced in the township. And so you got great access and proximity, and that tends to place higher value, and you have to pay for that.
That's why I think the idea that you had said earlier about having like when you're having a community of lots, maybe you have the smaller lots, but you also require some green space as part of that, because then the price of the lots is still small or smaller compared to the bigger lots, but they're still having green space in their neighborhood that they can use.
One thing that I thought was interesting was the Perry Homes development on the western edge of the township on top of the ridge that originally started out. They had that community central green space with the walking trail around the whole development, but as that community is ending up getting finished, it seems like all of that kind of went to the wayside. So I don't know if that was them driving that concept of the development or that was the township driving that concept, but that's basically what you're talking about, because that housing plan started off of having a central green space with a community trail, and obviously the people buying the lots ended up realizing that wasn't important to them because it doesn't seem like it's a feature to it anymore.
Was it
So-
important, or the Perry wanted more lots, so they just scrapped it?
Well, yeah, or Perry
Well, that's
wanted
what I'm
it,
wondering,
yeah.
you know, was it part of they realized that that they could make more by selling that land, but if I bought a small lot with the thinking that I would also have access to some green space and then I didn't, that might make me kind of cranky, so.
So that development, Mountain Ridge Estates, was a PRD, is a PRD. So that gazebo and the trail was located on the developer's land. So they did not have an active HOA to take care of anything. I think it was a lot of volunteer neighbors that were doing some things. So the township won't get involved in that, in HOAs or anything restrictive covenants wise. So I'm not sure why that's floundering, but the land that it's on is owned by the developer that has to remain open space, because that's just a small tip of a huge parcel of land that accounts for his open space.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just curious, because I remember when we were looking to build, we looked up there when it was brand new, and I thought that was cool, and friends of ours live up there now, and I realized that that's not a thing anymore, that part of it, so.
If you all, again, were the queen or king for the day, and you close your eyes, could you see doubling the population of the township? Back to the traffic?
I think it comes back to the traffic. If you could somehow, attempt to fix the traffic woes, then I could see a higher population density. But until that gets addressed, I don't.
So from
Not
your-
safely.
These are my words, so if I'm so off base, change them. From your perspective, the township should be hitting the top of the bell curve until something happens on 30, then maybe the bell can move a little higher.
30 and
It's
some,
kind of like topping out.
Route 30 and some of the other side main thoroughfares.
I have a
Once that
question.
happens, then yeah, I could see.
Yeah, if you
It growing.
build on 993, you might get more growth in that area, and it may not affect Route 30 traffic very much, right? So it's kind of that balancing act of where you can grow without making things miserable for the existing.
Do you have any comparative data for what happened with Murraysville whenever 22 was
Oh, that's a good one.
expanded? So, I mean, I sort of view us as sort of on the cusp of that. If there's going to be a similar project here,
That's actually that's interesting.
what happened when they finished the project? Were they able to? Did they add more houses? Did they have more people? Did it affect their traffic? Like, what happened?
I will try to dig into that and see what we can come up with. I'm smiling because it's actually a really good question. When you think of things like where Weyerhaeuser was, so that, you know which one I'm talking about, the parcel where the lumber, it's not a lumber yard, Weyerhaeuser sells lumber wholesale to other lumber yards. I don't know, that was probably 8 acres parcel right on 30. I think it turned into an auto repair and maybe there's some commercial development behind. You have those instances, which I don't think is what everybody quite had envisioned was the potential that could be there. But when 30 got improved and maybe there was more capacity, was there more residential development that occurred in the outskirts that funneled in, or 22, sorry, funneled in onto 22 than, east or west? So I'll check that. It's a really good question.
So I could say from some personal experience, Route 286 in Plum, right? They widened that a little
Yeah.
bit, and that definitely made commutes, because I worked off of it for many years, it definitely made the commutes better. But it didn't keep Phillips there, right? Phillips
They're in Baker
is
Square.
now down in Bakery Square, right? They closed up the old Westinghouse building that was right on the lower 286, and a lot of places moved from the other buildings they had up closer to New Kensington, the Murraysville area, and they moved even have their manufacturing in that place out in New Kensington that's like some international para-free zone or something that gives them better tax breaks, I think, and some duty things. So it helped personally on my commute and stuff like that, and I don't know if they built more houses, but it did not keep the big business there.
Yeah, just looking at some of the roadways in North Huntington, like Clay Pike, Barnes Lake, Lincoln Way, Route 30, I compare that like with Monroeville. You have Mossad Boulevard, Northern Pike, and 22. Yeah, a lot of traffic improvements to those roads, and it's still congested, but we're doing this all on 2-lane roads.
Yep. Yep, it's a good point.
And use roads as an example, McKee Road, we received complaint of McKee Road
Yeah,
and we did a traffic study, and there's 12, let's see, 900 plus, say 1,000, 2,200 cars per day on McKee Road. It's a cut-through road. And as we continue to develop in that area, it's even going to get even worse. And that's a problem that we're going to be reviewing now. That's just one example of, as we continue to develop, all these side roads are getting more congested.
right.
We get more complaints.
I mean, the southern and western edge of the township is definitely approaching, max capacity in my opinion, unless there's significant roadway improvements. So, I mean, you really are limited to the western edge of Route 30 and 993 corridor without significant infrastructure upgrades. But I agree with you, Harry, that the western edge, from a commercial standpoint of the township, is a poor representation of the community as a whole. You know, I mean, the commercial properties are older or unkept on that end of the township. You know,
Yeah. It's not very inviting or welcoming as a township whenever you're coming in from the western side. There's nothing saying, wow, this is a nice community.
The other issue out there is the lots are generally smaller, and you still have some original homes that were, you know, over 100 years old that were there, you know, before Route 30 was Route 30. So it's a challenge for a potential developer. They want larger parcels of land. So we had a development next to kind of Rita Arms Plaza as you're going down the hill from Sheets there on Carpenter, and they were trying to like piece together two properties just to make it viable for their business. And, you know, the one owner just was holding out, they wanted like, you know, $1 million. And it's like, well, that's not feasible. So if somebody can string together some properties, I'd like to see that. But again, that's, you know, the township, we can't really control that. So it's hard, but I would like to see that area needs a shot in the arm. Big
Wasn't
time.
that part of the Lerta district? I mean, wasn't that approved, so?
Yeah, there's Lerta
somebody come in
districts,
and get 0% taxes for
5 years or
increase,
10
yeah.
years, yeah.
so there is a section in North Huntington that's part of that?
Yeah, I think that Route 30
Yeah.
border out that way.
We have several Lerta districts, yeah,
Yeah.
along Route
I
30.
think that would be something that should be communicated more, because this is the first I've
I
heard.
agree.
Because if no one knows about it, you're not gonna draw in anyone to
Yeah.
go after that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there was anything outside Allegheny County with that. I knew North for Sales had a lot of that opportunity.
And that's something that we internally need to do a better job of advertising. I mean, but, you know, who do we advertise that to?
I don't know.
It's on our website, the information's on our website, but, you know, again, I think, you know, we communicate that to all the developers in the area, is there, you know, developers,
Is there a network for that?
yeah. I know I'm looking
Go
at
to
you because you're
realtors.
the realtor.
Well, I mean, I have connections to broker, but I don't know it to that level. I
Yeah.
have connections to commercial real estate brokers
Yeah.
for sure, but when it comes to industrial development, things like that.
You guys, do you do like, development community breakfasts or anything like that, like as an outreach? So some
No.
communities, if they want to promote some aspect of development, they'll go and almost kind of seed the cloud, so to speak. So they'll have a thing with the realtors, you know, whether it's residential or commercial, so they know what's going on, and maybe there's policies or things that are changing in the township, and it's an easy way for somebody to get on the radar screen and then to explain what's changing and why there's a benefit. Because those are the people that are shopping the properties. You trying to figure out which are the developers, you're wasting your time, because you're never gonna get them all. It's not that you're wasting, I shouldn't say it that way, it's not that you're not wasting your time. You'll expend an awful lot of energy and not be able to have a whole lot to show. You know, where going to the realtors is probably the better route to go. You know, and obviously through the economic development circles, so that they, again, go to a WCIDC, they're working with, you know, handfuls of developers on an hourly basis, and them knowing, okay, here are some of the opportunities. Now, using them, that's probably not a good example, because they know what you have in terms of LERTA and all that kind of stuff. But you have to be proactive about that. People posting one thing on a website probably is not gonna reap a lot of wheat.
And that kind of goes back to an earlier theme that we were talking about with Carolyn, and is the staffing levels of the township. And, you know, we've never had a dedicated economic development
You're
person.
handcuffed, you got so many things to do. and you don't
Yeah,
have time
yeah,
to
we
do
wear a
it.
lot of hats here as it is. And so, you know, if we did have an economic development coordinator, they could certainly be proactive if that's what they're doing, you know, talking to local businesses, local property owners. It would just, you know, would that be something that would be beneficial to the township and worth the price of adding a staff member? Because again, these are all tax dollars that we're talking about here, so.
Yeah, what kind of return on investment are you, do you make off of a new business or whatever? You know, what does the township reap from that versus what you're putting out?
Well, my last position in the city of Clarksburg, I created an economic development department. Got the planner in, and then right before I left to come here, I hired a grant writer. And I try to stay on top of it. It seems to be working out very well. I mean, it does take time. You're not going to see
Right.
the return on your investment right away.
Right, it's
But,
something new.
It's important. I think it's a very important position to have on staff.
But to go to build on Ryan's, if that economic development specialist also kind of was that interface directly with PennDOT. So there is more of that constant liaison on what needed to be done on Route 30, because the economic development and transportation are hand in glove. I mean, you can't make them be any, you can't take them apart. They're one and the same. So it's not just promoting LERTA and stuff like that, it's probably doing some other stuff as well.
What communities
Okay,
do
we'll
you
have to
know
think,
of
we'll have
that
to think
one,
about that.
that have a economic development?
Oh, well, okay, so, like in Allegheny County, some of the northern townships, meaning once you get up towards Butler County, Cranberry, you know, so there are some, and then when you get over really on the eastern side of the state, you're gonna see more of that. A lot of the internal organization, the planning department will be planning and development or something like that. So they'll have the same situation you have, wear the hat, oh, I'm the code officer, rotated, I'm the planning director, rotated, you know, down the economic development, and you never have time to do any one thing, you know, at the level that you really want to, or you makes it, you know, successful for everybody.
Is there any type of engagement by the township and the current active developers? Like, you know, go to Ryan Homes, we'd like to somehow develop 993, how do we help you find land to build more housing, you know, or go to commercial developers? I mean, I don't know, I just don't know the level of.
We're reactive in that aspect. I mean, they come to us and say, hey, can we sit down and talk about the development of this property? So,
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about workload, it'd be a lot more work to go find a new developer, but, you know, is there a lot of workload when it comes to someone that's already used to working with the township in other ways? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking out loud with that comment. I mean, obviously Schuster's a big one. Again, these are all residential developers, you know, who, I mean, Colony Holding, which is, I guess, still related to Schuster somehow. I guess they're really the only commercial developer kind of active in the community right now, but they seem to be focusing more on retail development. I mean, I agree with Jerry. I feel like, I mean, it'd be great, obviously, to grow to 50,000 residents, but at the end of the day, you almost need a real balanced mix, because you rather just maintain your population than explode population, because maintaining population, feels like is kind of where the healthiness of the community is. I mean, you still need to grow, but I mean, I think where you end up losing now is when you start losing the population, so.
And again, if we grow, we have to grow here, so that's more
Right.
police officers,
Right,
more public works, more public
Right.
works equipment, more, you know, more capital expenses.
when you hope you have the tax revenue to
Yeah.
to fund that, but, yeah.
Yeah, is it easier to grow like higher density things like apartment complexes, or like you mentioned Bakery Square, where it's an apartment and there's some restaurants and a handful of things right there, right?
That doesn't
You-
take a huge footprint.
Right,
but
you run
have-
one, you know, thing of sewage, you're only running it, you know, 20 feet or whatever. I'm sure that's not realistic, but you got that short line versus running it for a whole plan, right? You just have to that apartment complex, and you're growing potentially in those ways, right? Where it's a very dense area, potentially people who don't want to cut grass and do those activities. So you might have an area of North Huntington that's more dense and almost city-like,
Is
and
that on
other
Route-
sections.
Is that on Route 30?
Could be 993, could be
Yeah.
wherever.
I
But
wasn't trying to be a smart guy. Increasingly, we're seeing on commercial corridors, more and more pressure to build higher density residential.
So
So-
are those permitted to be built in currently zoned commercial areas? Or is that a?
We have an 8-story limit on commercial apartment buildings, or residential apartment buildings.
why
Yeah,
is
I
it
mean-
8-story?
It's in the. That's what was written in the zoning ordinance.
The other,
that-
the other
Usually
question
it's a little
is
on the
that what
older
we
side.
want, right?
Right,
Do-
is
Would
that
we
something-
rather have,
Probably the latter, John,
One's-
being honest.
you
It's
know,
probably
single-family
because
homes or
fire
more
apparatus that you have.
But-
dense, you know,
As a
condo
firefighter-
things?
That
I hear you.
they're fireproof buildings, sprinkler,
Sprinkle, yeah.
people aren't gonna be, you know, that's the least they're worried, you know, coming out a ladder. There's multiple stairwells, so I think that's, if that's the reasoning, I think it's pretty ridiculous, then probably looking at changing that.
So going back to where you started, not that you intended, it kind of drug you there, but some places, yes, are having these commercial corridors that, let's be honest, you know, whether it's purely, it started before COVID. COVID, I think, accelerated things. What we think of as retail, it's not gonna be the same that we see in 20.
Right.
Right. And the fact that you can buy a car online and get it in 5 days, to get the right brand. Some may take you 5 years, but I mean, it's ridiculous. And how Amazon does what they do, I can order a book and a pair of shoes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it shows up at 10 o'clock the next morning. And I still could go to my daughter's recital, and I didn't have to go to the store. You know, it's like, which again, that just means we need more warehouses. But what do you do with the Route 30 corridor when you have small parcels? Because they're not big parcels, and so because of the density in some places, don't want to have apartments or townhomes in what people thought were the lower density residential areas. Is that appropriate to be on Route 30?
So I wonder about.
That gives an option now for some of that land area developed. And so we've seen apartments going in behind Sam's Clubs and in the middle infill in a Green Gate type of situation where I have a big regional, you know, shopping center, not even a mall, just an outdoor shopping center that it starts with senior living and some other stuff, and, you know, there's an extended urgent care type of facility, and the grocery store is there, it's walkable. It's like, without the sidewalks and all the stuff that as planners we would all wanna have, but that stuff has to get retrofitted. And so I guess one of the things to stew about, you know, we're not gonna solve it tonight, but, stew about is part of that, the kind of the renaissance of Route 30, and there's a lot of different visions of what 30 could be, is residential in one of those. You know, I throw that to you guys to stew about that.
I have a comment about that. One of the things I was thinking about when he suggested that is kind of what you were talking about there, is that unless you make it walkable and there are amenities, it's not gonna draw people. Because part of the draw of a place like Bakery Square is that I don't have to have a car. I don't have to do anything. I can just roll out of my apartment and go to do everything I need to do. And so, like, I think if you wanna have a community like that, that's like sort of a live, work, play environment, you have to make it so that people don't have to move their cars in the course of several days.
You're not gonna walk down Route 30.
And you're not gonna walk down Route 30, so unless you have, like, somewhere like where you have like a place where you can sort of nestle a bunch of these places, together with sidewalks or biking or whatever, I think that that's really the draw of Bakery Square is you can, and then if you wanna leave the area, I mean, walk right outside of Bakery Square and there's like a row of those like healthy bike things. You can just grab one and go to another neighborhood without still moving your car. So I think that's a draw of a place like that. And I think it's great if we want to put some effort into that, but we
So
would have to plan it.
Like West Mifflin, where Century 3 is. They're kind of having the same conversation that you guys are having, what do we want to be when we grow up? And it kind of centers around what can possibly happen in Century 3. That's a little bit different circumstance. There's a big block of land there. You can literally create that whole neighborhood, so it's walkable within its enclave. Here, you have small parcels that were scattered, and you don't have that walkability. I would not get on a bicycle on Route 30. That would be,
Thank you.
literally Harry Carey, it's just not.
I mean,
not gonna do that.
what's interesting though, I mean, Monroeville, a developer in Monroeville, you see it on the Parkway when you get on 376 on the right-hand side, just built an apartment complex.
That's fair.
That's not walkable, that's not bikeable, that's sold out before it was even built.
I agree.
They're building it across the street now.
Yep,
So obviously there's demand.
there's demand.
In the east, for people that want to live in a bedroom community in that style of housing with easy access to infrastructure, highways and roadways. So,
I fully agree. It's a really good example.
but I mean, I do agree with you, but that, those might be the people that want the city lifestyle, that live in
Sure.
like Bakery Square, but is there that subset that want the more rural, maybe we're not rural, but not city lifestyle, but still live in an apartment or a condo or a townhome?
It might go to that same argument about affordability. Some people want to live in this town, in this area, but not be able to afford the prices of the real estate, but that gets them there.
I mean, because I could see smaller apartment complexes like that one in Monroeville. It's not a cheap apartment complex, on some of these smaller parcels on the western edge of the township. Because the township doesn't need more retail. As much as everyone wants 13 Chick-fil-A's and another Sheetz in the community, I mean, I don't know. It really, in my mind, it should be residential and some sort of industrial or office should be the focus. I mean, it's, he's right. How much more land do you need for retail? I mean, they're still developing up by Walmart, and it's not like people are jumping at to develop that rapidly. And, just because it's a hot topic on the Facebook pages, Gitgo's going next to McDonald's, not a retail developer. And, again, they're the ones that wanted to purchase the property. It had to get approved, and, they meet the requirements, but that's what's going there. So my point is, Trader Joe's isn't coming to North Huntington, so how do we, how do we continue the bedroom approach and hopefully mix in some light industrial and office? That's,
I like the apartment idea too, because one of the things I think somebody brought up in one of our earlier meetings was that, people, like, as our population ages, people want to downsize, and there's not like a lot of places for those people to go to. So having apartment complexes would, give that as an option, and then free up some of the housing market too.
or like a community, I mean, like a community like Redstone Highlands, I mean, that's, I feel like we're really underserved with those type of communities. Look, when Schuster builds the, smaller homes, the connected home, whatever you call them, not the townhomes, the villas, the connected villas, I mean, any developer comes in and builds those sell instantly. So how many of those people would live in more smaller apartment complex? I don't know. I don't know those answers, but you see other communities having success
Yeah.
with it that's not far from here.
Yeah, like
So-
McCandless, so go up past Rothbard Mall, go up that road. I think they had opened up, where Passivant Hospital is, there was a farmstead, I don't know, it's probably 300 acres. So LaRoche's college was on one side, and then the farmstead. And I think there are three, almost like Presby Care, one's in anthropology, I think I don't remember the other one, all came online. It's probably 500, 600 units. Don't know how many bedrooms are, but 3 fairly significant buildings all came on because the demand is there, definitely there. Okay. Other thoughts? We're at 6:30, so I don't know. What do you guys? Any of the information, took you through a whirlwind tour, didn't really give you a chance to study that. set the tone to start making you think. You got all that green area, which is kind of the donut, so to speak, all your development, and I think where it was Ryan that said it earlier, a lot of the easy land in the township has been developed. What is left is the more difficult land, you know, whether it's steepness, whether it's, if there's a floodplain to get into a property, or maybe it has been undermined or whatever, it's got some challenges. I got quite a few notes in terms of discussion. And, any final things you're thinking about? Some goals?
I mean, the average cost per home in the future can't be ignored, you know, and that's why I think, you know, the exploring the avenues of more concentrated housing and trying to attract a developer to do that. I mean, you see it on this slide. I mean, okay, I mean, I know the government's trying to suppress inflation, but maybe it'll level out, but it's never gonna come back down. So, you know, the cost to build a home is significantly more than it was 3 years ago, and then land costs will just keep going up with that too, so. I think you're kind of at a position now where it's either high-density housing or, you know, those in the higher income tiers are really gonna be the only ones building the homes on 1 acre lots.
Which is, going back to the observation you made earlier, for the people, they just wanna live in a more dense environment, it's probably more because that's what they can afford.
Right.
And it is getting worse, meaning over the last 5 years, there's been very much a noticeable change. And it's not a quality of life thing, it's just, it's the reality of what we're able to kind of afford by today's standards.
The turnpike probably doesn't help the case with Route 30 because the turnpike tolls continually going up probably continues to put pressure on Route 30 because,
Yeah, instead of getting on
Yeah.
the turnpike, they're going straight out
I
30.
never
Yeah.
thought about that.
I mean, living on the western edge of the township, if it's during rush hour, I will go on the turnpike to Monroeville. However, if it's not, I'm gonna go all the way down Route 30. You know, how many people do that, adding traffic to Route 30? So, you know, does that make the turnpike more of an asset or a problem in the future as turnpike tolls continue to increase? Because I don't see daily commuters wanting to really utilize the turnpike. I don't know, that's my thought there. I mean, I remember when we first moved to North Huntington, you could drive to Monroeville, it was 45 cents or 55 cents or something to go to Monroeville. I think, what is it now? Over $1.
What decade was that?
Not that long ago. I mean, it's gone up almost every single year, so.
Well, I know my brother lives in Cranberry, and just to go visit him, it's like, oh, what's the traffic look like? Okay, going through town's a little bit longer, but it's $15 cheaper than going out the turnpike. Right, so now I go down 30, go through Pittsburgh, and come out the other side. Just
Get to see the stadium.
And also, along with the turnpike, with them putting that slip ramp on in Penn Township, you're gonna open up more traffic coming into, you know, backside Sheridan Terrace, you know, Level Green in Ardera, Larmer. So is that gonna make that more attractive for someone to develop those areas even more? Or wanting to develop that? Is that something you might be able to capitalize on as a township?
It's really over by Oak Hollow Park. I mean, what's
Like-
left, because that housing plan just got built over there, you know?
But on the, like where was that S&T Bank on 130 there, cut through there, you're down on Paintertown Road. You're,
Oh, yeah.
you know, if they're putting that slip ramp by the Harrison City Maintenance Shed right there, you come in that side of the township, a lot of cut through roads and, you know,
I mean, you are right, though. Anyone that lives on that side of the township will just drive down to there to get on the turnpike instead of backtracking to the Irwin interchange to get on the
Yep.
turnpike.
Yeah.
So that is gonna be a future issue on that side of the township, when the turnpike does that.
'cause I saw an article that I think they're putting 3 slip ramps in the throughout the state, and they did say that one was one of the three, so I mean, if you're already in the top three that they're planning on, that's gonna happen sooner or later.
Other thoughts? Okay. Next month?
Yep, second Tuesday of every month. Second Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, today's
Yes.
Monday, just until midnight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a happy, or Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thanks, you too.
Go into one of the following.
Much better for you.